Last week, if you guys did watch the show, I told you people just keep forgetting. This is something that always happens. People just keep forgetting and forgetting and forgetting off one loss. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Inside the Distance. As you can see, my partner, Anthony Bashilio Bush, is not with me today. He will be back next week. This is what you guys are here for, bro. This is what we wait for. When we go through these little cards, like the card last week, the week before, this is what we wait for. We're waiting for this big UFC288. Just any pay-per-view card that comes, they give us these little scraps and these crackers and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, boom, we get landed with this card. Great card. We've all been waiting for this for a long time. There was a couple fights that were nixed early on, like obviously Oliveira and Dariush would have been a great fight that we could have saw. I was actually looking much more with Bryce Mitchell and Jonathan Pierce, but now he's fighting Evloev. So still just a great card. I mean, obviously the headliner is Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo, a much anticipated fight by everybody. So we're going to break down the main card, but first we're going to go back to last week. We're going to do a real quick review. Before we do that, if you guys want full content, full predictions, everything that we do from a DFS perspective, podcast, live stream, we got a great Discord community. Go to the MadLabMMA.com. We're running a promo this week for UFC 288. It's $24.99 for your first month. And trust me, it's money very well spent. So please come check us out there. Also, please like, subscribe, and comment on this video below. Do you like my philosophy behind the fights that I'm picking, how I'm breaking them down? Are you going a different way? Do you agree? Do you not care? Just help us build this page a little bit. It's a new page. It's a new show. We're really trying to get some traction here, so we do really appreciate it. Last week, if you guys did watch the show, I told you people just keep forgetting. This is something that always happens. People just keep forgetting and forgetting and forgetting off one loss. I told you guys that Ricky Simón is a very good fighter, but he does have holes in his game. And there is certain aspects where fighters do kind of overachieve a little bit and fight a little bit over their head, and eventually it's got to come to a halt. And when you got a guy like Song Yadong who's coming off a loss to a guy like Corey Sandhagen, people kind of wrote him off a little bit, right? Like they kind of wrote him off a little bit. I don't know why. I don't know where people's minds were here. I mean, at one point in time, they were so high on Song Yadong, and then all of a sudden, boom, like he gets one loss and people gave up on him. So we were all over him there, and he came through for us, which is great. The one blip in the radar, I got to say, would be Stephanie Egger. Like, I did not think she would lose that fight. A lot of people didn't think that she would lose that fight. But shame on me. And shame on everybody else who kind of backed her, because at the end of the day, it is female MMA, right? We kind of never learn our lesson there. We're always like, all right, well, she's got to win this fight. She's got to win this fight. And you kind of go back after the fight, and you're like, well, female MMA again, it did us in. So kind of my fault for having that much trust in her, but a lot of people did as well. It wasn't just me, but lesson learned. Hopefully I learned that lesson this time. But the card kind of unfolded very odd. Julian Erosa, I didn't expect to lose. He got knocked out by Padilla. Quinlan was another disappointment. I really thought Quinlan would win that fight. So the last two cards have been very odd. I mean, very odd. Almost unpredictable to a point. So I don't really take onus in that. I don't look at that and be like, oh my God, like what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with the process? The last two cards, they have been very unpredictable. We're going to get back hard in UFC 288. I've had a firm grasp on this card for a while. We're going to start with the main event, because that's really why everyone's here. So you got Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo. And the way I broke this fight down is, one thing I will tell you about Aljamain Sterling is, if one person has a firm grasp on him and his style, I would honestly say it's me. And I'm not saying that for any other reason, but I just don't pick against him in a lot of spots. When he fought Corey Sandhagen, I picked Sterling. He won. When he fought Peter Yan in the first fight, I picked Yan. I picked Sterling. Odd controversy, with the whole thing that happened. But at the end of the day, a knee is a knee is a knee. It's an illegal blow. So the Yan backers were kind of shitting all over Sterling, saying, he's a bum, he's an actor, he deserves an Academy Award. Whatever you guys think about Aljamain Sterling, that's not his fault. He did not have a magnet in his head where that knee connected. That was a hard knee. It was an illegal knee. It was an egregious knee. But the one thing that people kind of did not see in that fight, and this is where you really have to look into your providers, and you have to look at who you're listening to and stuff like that. People looked at that as an acting job on Aljamain Sterling part. Okay, that's what they looked. But they didn't look at the bigger picture. And this is the important thing when you're breaking down fights. Fights are not only about the physical. It's not only about your skill set. It's not about your talent. It's not about your record. It's about, there's a lot of mental involved too. And the one thing that I saw in that Peter Yan fight with Sterling won was I saw a guy in Peter Yan that can be frazzled, that can be frustrated, that isn't mentally wrapped together all that well. That is the main reason why I took Sterling in the second fight, and everybody thought Yan was going to starch him. I took Sterling in the second fight for that reason, not because I thought Sterling was the better fighter, which I think he is all around, but I really believe that Aljamain Sterling was going to get into Peter Yan's head. He was going to frustrate him. He was going to fight emotional. He was going to fight off his game plan, and Aljamain Sterling was going to be able to really unravel him mentally. That's exactly what happened with him. That's exactly what happened with him. He ended up winning that fight decisively. I picked him against T.J. Dillashaw. He ends up beating T.J. Dillashaw. Now, if you look at Peter Yan and you go back to Peter Yan, look what happened after his loss to Aljo. He beat Corey Sandhagen in the decision. He lost to Aljo again. Then after that fight, when he lost to Aljo again, he mentally unraveled. He lost to Sean O'Malley. He lost to Marab. So now he's on a 3-fight losing streak, and that is literally all mental. So I called that out in the first fight. I said, after that, he threw that knee. You're a champion. Like, you got to know the rules. If you throw a knee like that, that's not an accident. That's because you were mentally unraveled. And that is the main reason why I went with Aljo in both of those fights. When you look at somebody like Aljo, the only thing you really got to question with him sometimes is his cardio. Like that fight against Aljo, that fight against Yan, the first fight, his cardio kind of failed him. He was winning that fight. And then all of a sudden, Yan started dialing him in. We know Yan is a slow starter. He started kind of piecing him up. Since then, he looks like he got it kind of dialed in. And when you look at Aljo, people are still sleeping on this guy. They're still sleeping on this guy, whether it's they don't like him, whether it's they think he's arrogant, whether they think he's corny, whatever the case may be, people still are sleeping on Aljamain Sterling and not giving him the credit that he deserves. Now, he's got a very formidable opponent, a very, very good opponent in Henry Cejudo, who obviously credential-wise, I mean, let's face it, credential-wise, the guy's an Olympic wrestler, gold medalist, 2-weight division champion. He's beaten, his biggest claim is beating Demetrius Johnson. And the thing with him is, if you really go through his resume, though, look at the names that are on there. He beat an older Dominic Cruz. He beat Marlon Moraes, who, let's look at the fallen from grace Marlon Moraes has beat. He beat T.J. Dillashaw, which T.J. Dillashaw, isn't really T.J. Dillashaw anymore, even though now he's retired. He beat DJ, amazing win. Anytime you beat DJ, to me. Then he beat Sergio Pettis. He beat Wilson Hayes. So he's beating good guys, but a lot of them are kind of names, right? These guys aren't in their prime of their primes. A lot of them are names. Good wins, very good wins. But like I said, these are guys that kind of had their day, or just not what they were, before Cejudo faced them. He's still beating them. He's still on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's still on a good win streak. However, if you look at his resume and you look at back in the past when he started, he was very wrestling-centric, this guy. This guy was very, very wrestling-centric. 2 takedowns, 3 takedowns, 3 takedowns. So though he had 8 takedowns in 3 fights, okay? He was very wrestling-centric. He was leaning on his wrestling. Then all of a sudden, he ended up getting Gilbert Burns disease a little bit, who we're going to talk about in a little while. And he decided that I'm going to become more of a striker. And in his last 3 fights, he's got 2 takedowns in 3 fights, which means he's relying on his hands much more. Now, I know all 3 fights ended by TKO, but at the end of the day, you have one that went 3 rounds, one that went 2 rounds, one that went 1 round, and you're only landing 2 takedowns in 3 fights, which is not a lot, which shows he's not leaning on his wrestling as much. So his ability to wrestle is there, but he's kind of putting it in his back pocket as an ace now, which is fine because his striking is very, very good. He's a very cerebral fighter. But when you're going against a guy like Aljamain Sterling, who is the bigger guy, he's the longer guy, he's the rangier guy, he's also got very good wrestling, and he is the better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player with a black belt under Matt Serra. you need to find your way inside. And if you're going to find your way inside with that kind of wrestling credentials that he has, why would you find your way inside to strike when you could find your way inside to grab the hips and take him down? Now, is it the greatest idea to take someone like Aljamain Sterling down? No, because his grappling is very, very good. Wrestlers are positioned before submission. Grapplers and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu players are submission before position. So it's going to be a position versus submission game on the ground. Aljamain Sterling is not a bad wrestler. This is not a guy that, Cejudo's just going to wash in the wrestling department. Not to mention he is going to be the smaller fighter in there. Aljamain Sterling's wrestling has been more active than Henry Cejudo. 5 takedowns, 2 takedowns, 1 takedown. So he's got 8 takedowns in his last 3 fights. Cejudo's got 2 in his last 3. So he's been banking more on his wrestling. Now, is it going to be easy to take someone like Cejudo down? Is he going to try, or is he going to use that kind of funk master style of striking? That's another thing. Now, that ties into my next statement about this fight. You got a guy in Henry Cejudo who took 3 years off, and he's a timing fighter. When you're a smaller guy and you got to make reads and you got to find your way inside, you have to have a certain timing. It's not easy to train for a guy like Aljamain Sterling. Is he a good striker? No, he's an odd striker, and that's what makes him good, because you can't make reads on him. It's very hard to make a read on a real goofy foot striker like Aljo. He's been more active. He has his range down. He's got his distance. He has his timing. Cejudo's going to have to find that after the layoff. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, he is active. He is training elite fighters. He is in the gym every day, and he's with nothing but high-level people. Yes, you're absolutely right, but you know what else he's doing? He's being a father. He's being a family man. He's got another baby on the way. This is a guy whose life completely changed. And if you don't think that matters, yes, that matters, because there comes a point in time where you literally, your life is yours. You're going to the gym when you want to go to the gym, for as long as you want to go to the gym, training for as long as you want, eating what you want to eat. Your life is about you at that point, when you want to be a champion. But when you have a family now and your dynamics of your life completely change, your life isn't all yours anymore. So he's got a family now. He's got another baby on the way. He's got his gym. He's got a lot of stuff going on. So it's not like he has the time and he can focus and hone everything just on fighting. It's not the case. So that layoff wasn't a relaxing layoff. It was him concentrating on his family, concentrating on, building his brand a little bit, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to now you're going to get back into live action, it's very different when you're fighting live action to sparring action. It's very, very different. Not to say that he can't do it, because if anybody can do it, it's Henry Cejudo. But there's just a lot of factors involved here that I think people are overlooking with Aljamain. I think they're looking at the Olympic credentials of Cejudo. I think they're looking at the accomplishments of Cejudo. I think they're buying into the whole, Triple C thing and the way he breaks down fights and the way he tries to be analytical and who he's coaching. And, he's very smart and intelligent, with his fight IQ. People are looking at all that stuff, and it's all true. But the fact of the matter is, when you have a 3-year layoff, and you are the smaller fighter in there, and you're fighting in a guy's hometown in New York, where the crowd, with every jab, with every punch, with every kick that comes your way, the crowd's going to erupt. And if you give them the same feedback back, it's not going to erupt so much. So the judges also have that on their plate too. Not only that, but he's the champion. So in a really, really close fight in the hometown, the judges are going to be a little skeptical and say, you know what, that was a really, really close fight. This is coming down to the 5th round. It's 2-2. If this is close, I could see a little hometown lean to say, you know what, let's just slide it his way. So there's a lot of things stacked against Cejudo here where people aren't really looking at it. And that's why I think the line is so close too. The line is very, very close, and Aljo's actually the favorite. And I'm looking at it as, it's kind of trappy, if you ask me, because that's just telling people to pick Cejudo. It's almost like a DK boost. Like, just go pick Cejudo. Look, we're giving you dog money. Go take him. Go take him. Don't take him. So I think it's going to be a great fight, and I think there's 2 factors that come to play here. It's going to be, on Aljo's side, his cardio. That's really going to be the only thing I'm worried about with him. It's going to be his cardio, which I don't think it should be a problem, but that is something I am concerned with. He's got to put a frenetic pace, a chaotic pace on this whole fight. And if he doesn't, then Cejudo's going to climb his way back. The thing on Cejudo's side is going to be, is his timing going to be there? Is he going to get his timing down quick enough where he's not going to fall behind rounds and he's going to have to really get chaotic in there and try to go for a finish? And is he going to employ his wrestling? Is he going to be smart about it? And is he going to come in and just look for the hips and try to use his Olympic wrestling to kind of, bring that? Does he not want to maybe get hurt anymore because he's got a family? He doesn't want to take the punishment. So the safe route is wrestling. Is he going to do that? I don't know. That's his best path. It's still a bit dangerous path, but his best path. I'm going Sterling here. I'm going Sterling again. I'm not picking against him. I think Sterling has too many things going in his favor. Fighting at home, more active fighter, bigger guy, better jiu-jitsu, awkward striking. Cejudo just has too many more things he's got to show me after such a long layoff. So I'm going Aljamain Sterling. I wouldn't be shocked if maybe he takes his back and maybe submits him, but I'll go Aljo by decision and still. Next fight, you have, let me go back here. Yeah, Bilal Muhammad, and you have Gilbert Burns. Now, this is a fight, honestly, that I got to be honest with you. I'm hoping there's a part of me that wants Bilal to win this fight because I think he deserves it. I think he deserves it. But then there's a part of me that wants him to lose because I just don't want to hear this nonsense no more. I don't want to hear all this nonsense about title shots and Kobe's not deserving and all the trash talking. The fact of the matter is you don't sell fights. You just don't. You don't sell fights. You're not a guy who, if you became champion, that people are going to starve to watch. What can he understand about that? Do I think he's a good fighter? Yes. Do I think he is getting shafted a little bit? Yes. But so is Beneil Dariush. Life isn't fair. Life isn't fair. I mean, let's be honest. Look at Beneil Dariush. Who deserves it more than him? So when you look at that and you're saying, all right, well, how much more are you going to complain? If you beat Gilbert Burns here, then and you don't get a title shot, then there's a big problem. There's a big problem. But at the end of the day, let's relax here. This is a guy who, is he good? Yeah, but if that fight would have never gotten eye poke with Leon Edwards, he was on his way to getting waxed against Leon Edwards. And if Leon Edwards would have didn't throw that eye poke and that fight would have continued, we would not even be having this conversation right now because who the hell would want to see that fight when Leon Edwards was literally beating him from pillar to post before that fight? He made him look like an amateur in there. So this is a fight where Bilal Muhammad, this is either going to be, he's going to be vindicated or he can just shut up now because you're going to beat Gilbert Burns and now you got to climb again. Gilbert Burns, on the other hand, this is a guy who we're going to talk about someone else on this card. They got a little situation with. I just don't like that he's fighting so frequently. He's like grabbing these fights. It's almost like it's purse money fights. Almost like he just wants to get him out of the way. It's either he needs, not that he needs the money, but he's looking for an early exit for maybe a little bit of retirement, or he's just so feverishly trying to get into the title contention because he's getting older that he's just willing to take fights and take fights and take fights. Either way, that's not good, especially the style that he fights. If you fight like a Bilal Muhammad where you fight safe and you're not, really going for broke and you're not taking too much damage and you're more of a decision rider, that's okay. But when you're someone like Gilbert Burns that jumps into the fire all the time, your body needs a break. Your body needs a break. So by him continuously taking these fights, on quicker turnarounds, it's not beneficial for him. I understand the two reasons why he might be doing it. He's maybe a little impatient, or he's looking for, to stock away that money. At the end of the day, it's still not a good look. I am going Gilbert Burns here. I don't think Bilal Muhammad beats him. I think that Gilbert Burns, I know Bilal asked for 5 rounds in this fight for a reason, because he wants Burns to be dragged into those deeper waters and hope he gasses out. But I think Burns is going to put it on him to a point where Bilal might need a finish down the stretch, and he ain't going to get it. So I'm going to go Gilbert Burns here. I'm going to go Gilbert Burns by either submission or decision, but I am picking Gilbert Burns in this spot. Next fight, you got Jessica Andrade and Yan Xiaonan. This is another fight. Jessica Andrade scares me because of the mere fact that she's taking fights every month. March, February, now. February, March, now. Or January and February, and now. That's the 3 fights. She's just taking fights. And if you're a calculated striker, if you are a distance striker, if you are like an Angela Hill, that's fine. But if you're a Jessica Andrade, where you are literally fighting fire and tooth and nail, you can't be taking fights like that. Your body needs a break. It showed up in the Erin Blanchfield fight. It's almost like buying a car, right? And you ask someone, how many miles you got in your car? And you're like, I got 100,000 highway miles. Then the other guy goes, I got 100,000 city miles. The highway miles car is the smoother ride. This one took some damage already, hitting potholes. You're braking all the time. That's Andrade. She's the City Miles car. She's the one who's going in and she's driving on the rough side streets. She's not coasting on the highway with just skill, precision, and technique. You need a break. The car needs a tune-up. You got to let it sit for a little while. You got to change the tires. So that's what I fear about Zanan. But the thing with Yan Zanan is when you look at her record, yeah, she beat Mackenzie Dern. But Mackenzie Dern, we all know her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is phenomenal, but she does not have good grappling. She does not have good wrestling. She lost to Marina Rodriguez, prime Marina Rodriguez. She lost to Carla Esparza. Carla Esparza 10-8 rounded her in round 1, finished her in round 2. The wrestling got advantage of her. Then she beat Claudia Gadelha, but Claudia Gadelha, that was her last fight. That was literally her last fight. She's never fought since then, and she was no ways near in her prime. She was on a losing streak. She couldn't buy a fight. She beat KK. KK just wasn't this, the same KK that we remember from back in the day. She beat Angela Hill, who Angela Hill is kind of up and down. She either shows up or she doesn't. So, she's got a nice record and she's got good names on her record, but she's only fought like 3 girls that were kind of in their prime, and she lost to 2 of them. So is this a big fight for her? Yes, this is a big fight. You beat Mackenzie Dern and then you beat Jessica Andrade. It's huge. But if you look at her, if you look at Jessica Andrade now, this is a girl who, she fought Calvillo, she fought Lemos, she fought Murphy, she beat her. That was, a fight that she fought in January. She comes back right after that in February, and she fights Erin Blanchfield, and she did not look like Jessica Andrade. She just didn't look the same, So now she's coming back again, and she's fighting again. It's like when you give your body a break. This is telling me that she's coming towards a close, and she's looking to make that money. She's looking to bank away for her future. She's looking to take as many fights as she possibly can. She's not going to turn anything down. It's more about the money now than it is about the actual championship, and I respect that. I do. I mean, she's been in for a long time. She was a belt holder once before. If it comes her way again, then great. But right now, her focus is setting herself up, and I have no problems with that because she's always going to come and fight. I do think she wins this fight. I do think she gets back on track here. I don't think she took a lot of damage in that Blanchfield fight. I mean, she took some, but it wasn't like a bludgeon. She wasn't really upset when she lost that fight. It was almost like it was just, I came here to fight to see what would happen. I think she gets back on track here. I think she wins. Scary fight. Excuse me, guys. I'm just getting over a cold. Scary fight, but I do think Andrade ends up pulling this one out. Next fight, we have we're going to go to Kron Gracie and Charles Jourdain. This is a fight, honestly, guys, where I don't normally do this. I don't normally, go deep and talk about this. But I'm going to because usually I tell you guys to stay away from people who are on layoffs. And I usually do. I usually stay away from people that are on layoffs. For instance, Henry Cejudo and, so on and so forth. You just don't know what you're going to get. And you really don't know what you're going to get from Kron Gracie. The thing with Kron Gracie is if you go back into his history and you go back into his last fight against Cub Swanson, that was an embarrassment to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and his family. Not on my watch, on theirs. He caught a lot of heat from Brazil. He caught a lot of heat from Rickson Gracie, his father, and his family. He fought a guy in Cub Swanson who wanted to stand and trade with him, and he decided, I'm going to stand and trade with him instead of taking everything that my family created and utilize that to win this fight. He literally just abandoned it. And while the fight was going on, the more and more he was getting pieced up, the more and more he was getting worked, the more and more we all thought he was going to go for a takedown, and he never did. He caught so much criticism in that fight for not shooting takedowns and not using his grappling that I'm not saying he left the sport because of that, but he did take some time off. His last fight was October 12th, 2019. So this is a guy who's so high level in grappling that he could put his grappling down for 5 years and just work on his striking, and he'll still be one of the best grapplers in the UFC. Did he do that? I don't know. Freddie Roach was training him. He had, some guys in his camp that were very good strikers that were training him. But at the end of the day, A grappler is a grappler and is a grappler. And Charles Jourdain is a very, very good fighter. He's a very good fighter. He's very talented. He's very awkward. He's very unchained. He'll throw real good spinning attacks. His grappling is also pretty good. But at the end of the day, pretty good doesn't level up to elite when it comes to grappling. I think Kron Gracie knows how much shit he took. And it's going to be an issue for him, I think, because I think Kron Gracie knows that he's got to take this fight to the ground. He's got to take this fight to the ground. He's got to show his family tree here. And I think that's exactly what he's going to do. I think he's going to bring back the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu program. I think he's going to take this to the ground. I think he's going to work this early. And I think he's going to show everybody that, there's a reason why he's Rickson Gracie's son. He's a heavy dog in this fight, and I don't blame people for taking him as long, but I just think there's no possible way in hell that this kid is not going to implore his grappling. If he does not implore his grappling and he decides to stand and trade, then, I wouldn't doubt his family doesn't exile him. If you're going to lose with your pedigree behind you. Do not lose with a different format. It's almost like Marcelo Garcia trying to go into boxing. It just doesn't work. Or Mike Tyson trying to come into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It just doesn't work that way. Go with your pedigree. Lose with your pedigree and win with your pedigree. So that's it for the fights. It's going to be a great night. Like I said, I'm picking Kron Gracie in this fight, by the way, and I'm going to pick Kron Gracie by submission. Go to the MadLabMMA.com. We got the special, $24.99, and we will see you guys after the fights.